Out of the many different types of magics that are basically synonymous with fairy tale, celestial spirit magic is essentially one of the big things that we have seen throughout the course of the story, as the female lead, Lucy Arphelia, is a celestial spirit wizard and uses celestial spirit magic, which allows her to summon celestial spirits and utilize different abilities and work with these celestial spirits. Now, before I get deep into the celestial spirits, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. Fairy Tale Fridays have been very great lately, and I want to keep adding in some more Fairy Tale Explained videos, as there's a lot to really get into when it comes to this wonderful series that we love. Now with that out of the way, let's jump right in. So celestial spirits are essentially magical beings that inhabit their own separate dimension or universe that is called the celestial spirit realm, which is where they live their lives. However, certain mages and wizards can actually call upon them using celestial spirit keys. And these keys are separated into two different categories, silver and gold. Silver is the more regular term, as it is just more common spirits that exist throughout the celestial world. However, the golden keys are essentially the rarest, and there's only one of each key, allowing you to make a contract with one of the 12 gold zodiac. Alongside the zodiacs, the silver keys also are named after specific constellations in our world. And once a celestial spirit mage ends up finding one of these keys, they can choose to open the gates of that specific celestial spirit and make a contract with them so they could work together. And this is where we get into the rules of celestial spirits and their contracts with their wizards. So whenever a celestial spirit wizard wants to use a key and gain the power of these celestial spirits, they must first open up the key, and then they have to set up a contract with each respective spirit. These contracts tend to act a lot of the time like a business deal, as in you can only summon them on specific days that they are available to be summoned, or under specific situations depending on the spirit and when they can be summoned, as each spirit has their own personalities, and that could in turn affect said contract. When this contract is formed, it is a strong bond between the wizard and the spirit, and they become dedicated to each other, so these bonds end up becoming very close and very important to both parties involved, as it could form everlasting friendships, or it could just be a full-on just business deal. It depends on the wizard. Usually celestial spirit wizards make these contracts with the celestial spirits during downtime once they acquire their key, or if they just have the opportunity to after a mission. But in rare instances, like during the Phantom Lord arc when Lucy had the Sagittarius key, she had summoned him before making a contract, and due to the severe situation that they were in, the contract would have been postponed and Sagittarius was allowed to help. These are rare circumstances, but in the middle of a heated battle, a contract can in fact be assigned with later if the situation calls for it. However, due to the binding nature of these contracts that the wizards end up creating, there are ways that a contract can in fact be void or broken. Either, for example, if the wizard is arrested, or if the user ends up just canceling the contract themselves, or if the caster dies. There's also the possibility of the terms of the contract that the wizard and the spirit sign, where if either party ends up breaking it, the contract is null and void. Now once you have your contract, you can immediately summon your celestial spirit in order to help. Once you open a gate to that specific spirit, it appears right next to you, as that is usually where the gate ends up opening up. There's no real way for it to happen any other way. But outside of these main contracts, all celestial spirits have to abide by the rules of the ruler or deity of the celestial spirit world, the Celestial Spirit King. And as of this moment, there's only one ironclad rule that must not be broken above all others, and that is the circumstances of a summoner's death to be directly or indirectly the fault of the celestial spirit. The biggest example is when Loki, aka Leo the Lion, essentially summoned himself with his own power and refused to close his gate, because his wizard was being abusive to her spirits. And so, due to her power, she couldn't open multiple gates and had to go on jobs without Leo, and eventually one of these jobs ended up with her being killed in action, and Leo was blamed for it, and even he viewed himself as responsible for this death, as if he did not keep his gate open, she would have been able to summon spirits to help her in battle and she wouldn't have died. And so Leo was punished to never return to the celestial spirit world and close his gate, and him being stuck in the human world. Now, this is actually very bad for celestial spirits, as while they do have a good amount of magical power and can survive in the human world, if they're there for too long, their magical power will deplete and eventually they will actually die and completely cease to exist. Why this is so scary is the fact that celestial spirits are quote-unquote unkillable in the human world. If they receive a large amount of powerful or even fatal damage, their gates will automatically close and they will return to the celestial spirit world. Now, a lot of the times, other than the methods that I mentioned, a gate for a spirit can actually be closed if both parties want the gate to be closed. If one of the spirits is feeling exhausted and the caster sees this, the two of them essentially can agree to close the gate and the spirit can go back to the celestial spirit world. Now, there are certain exceptions to this rule, like I mentioned with Leo, but since certain spirits can in fact summon themselves, they do so using their own magic. When they're summoned to the human world, celestial spirits essentially are using a bit of the caster's magic to come to that world. And so they can stay for as long as the celestial spirit wizard has magical power to keep them in the world and to keep their gate open. Now, some spirits, and this is mainly the case with spirits that have strong bonds or have powerful magic, can actually open their gates themselves, such as, like I mentioned, with Leo. However, there are other exceptions, like Horologium that Lucy has, the living clock, grandfather clock spirit that she has, a lot of the time summons himself out of nowhere to protect Lucy from very powerful or dangerous attacks that could otherwise kill her or maim her severely. So these are instances where celestial spirits can essentially sense the danger or certain situations from the celestial spirit world and open their gates themselves with their own magical power to keep them there for a short amount of time. And if celestial spirits do this, they can close their gates at any time they want. Now, when it comes to closing gates, spirits can also be forced back, as seen with Lucy in the Loki arc, where she essentially tried to force his gate closed even though she was not his celestial spirit wizard. But a more prominent example is when Taurus was essentially being controlled and was used to attack Lucy, and so Lucy had to forcibly close Taurus's gate so that he wouldn't do anything to her against his will. And a lot of the times, it does depend on the strength of the celestial wizard, as if a spirit is strong enough, whether it be their magic or even their will, they can refuse the gates closing, as seen with, obviously, Leo with the prior example earlier in the video. Also, I just want to make this really quick to mention, Virgo has also summoned herself multiple times to help Lucy or for comedic relief. So, yeah, I just thought I should mention that. It's honestly kind of funny whenever Virgo shows up. She's one of my favorites. But the last main thing I want to talk about in terms of celestial spirits is their power level. Because even though the celestial spirits seem to have pretty fluctuating power levels in the series, it has been stated that the celestial spirits, their power is more or less equivalent or a little bit higher than the wizard that summons them, as it requires the power of the summoning wizard to bring them forth into the human world. And in doing so, the power used to bring them in and the power of the wizard at base throughout is affecting their overall magical output. And it was stated in series by Lucy that if she trained more and had more magical power and was able to have more control over herself and the gates, her celestial spirits could be as strong, if not stronger, than Natsu. And one of the clearer examples of herself and the celestial spirits being a lot stronger than normal is actually during the 100 Years Quest spin-off manga for Fairy Tail, where she went to Alentar, a separate dimension that was filled with a lot of magical power, and this boosted both her magical output as well as the output of her celestial spirits, and since she grew stronger, her spirits also in turn grew stronger. So this is something that can go up in time with enough training, which is a very interesting addition to this set of powers. And now the final alteration when it comes to the celestial spirits is the star dress forms. Now these are specifically an ability that celestial spirit mages can use with, for right now, these zodiac keys from all we've seen. And this is a special trait if you have a strong bond with your spirits and you have enough magical energy to utilize this technique. This allows celestial spirit wizards to not only summon their celestial spirits if they want to, but they can also gain the traits of these celestial spirits to boost their overall physical speed and strength, and even magical output to an extent, to grow stronger and even use their own magical abilities based off of the spirit they choose to use a star dress of, giving the celestial spirit a chance to essentially fight side by side with their caster on equal playing field. and this gives the Celestial Spirit Wizard access to that spirit's power, and even gives them a toolbox of abilities to use in combat. And by using the Stardress form, their appearance and clothing will change depending on the Celestial Spirit that they choose to essentially equip onto themselves. The only ones who have done this are Lucy and Yukino, as these are the only two prominent Celestial Spirit Wizards that have Zodiac keys. It is a nice utilization of the power and gives Celestial Spirits another utilization in combat, as well as giving them the chance to help out their caster in a way that doesn't involve them physically being on the battlefield, as the wizard does not need to summon the Celestial Spirit in order to use a Stardress, as shown multiple times with Lucy throughout Fairy Tail. And it is also possible for a Celestial Spirit Wizard to essentially use two different Stardresses at the exact same time to make different combinations of these powers. In a similar way, for when a Celestial Spirit Wizard, if they're strong enough, can essentially summon multiple spirits at the exact same time, with I believe Lucy's right now being 2 to 3, if not more, depending on her emotional state and state of her magical power. These types of abilities vary depending on the strength of the Celestial Wizard, as well as the spirits they end up summoning, as their strength can end up draining them even more. Now, as mentioned earlier, to cap off this list, there are 12 golden Zodiac keys, as well as a large variety of silver keys. However, there is actually a 13th Zodiac key, which is the black key of the Snake Charmer, Ophiuchus. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. And this has only been used one time in the series by Yukino during the Grand Magic Games, and also this spirit also made an appearance in the filler arc, which is the Eclipse Celestial Spirits. And now for the final piece of information that is very integral to Celestial Spirits and Celestial Spirit Wizards, and that is that they are capable of summoning the Celestial Spirit King. However, unlike the utilization of the different Celestial Spirit keys, the Celestial Spirit King doesn't require a key. Instead, the cost for summoning the Celestial Spirit King is the destruction of a golden key, and even more specifically, they need to have a strong bond with the wizard that they are contracted with. As what happened during the Tartarus arc, when Lucy was up against the wall and the only one fighting off the entirety of the Tartarus Guild, she had no choice but to sacrifice the key of her closest and longest friend, Aquarius, the first spirit that she ever contracted with and gained from her mother, in order to save everyone by summoning the Celestial Spirit King. As once the key is destroyed, that is it for the contract, and that spirit is stuck in the Celestial Spirit World, seemingly never to be contacted by that wizard ever again. Now, we learn later on in 100 Years Quest and in Alvarez that the golden keys aren't gone for good. Once they're destroyed, they will be reconfigured and they'll appear somewhere else in the world of Fairy Tail for another Celestial Spirit Wizard to eventually come across and make a contract with. So even if you destroy the key, there is still the slight possibility that you could go out and find that key once again. But even with that information, it is incredibly difficult to even find the golden keys in the first place without very good information gathering, or in some cases where the spirit can in fact try and find a wizard that they deem to be a good master that they would want to contract with, such as what happened with Virgo and later down the line Leo and Gemini. And that's essentially it. That's all the mainline information that you need to know about Celestial Spirits, the utilization of their powers, and how they benefit the Celestial Spirit Wizards that they are contracted with, where they're from, the rules of their contracts, etc. Now, there are specific abilities and powers that Celestial Spirit Wizards can in fact use in the future, but those are most likely going to be entirely different videos in and of themselves. And I also mentioned those Eclipse Celestial Spirits. Those are non-canon, those are filler, but those would make a very fun video for me to make in the future as well. But what did you guys think? Did you understand everything that I stated about Celestial Spirits? Do you find this power interesting, and would you actually like to see a video of me talking about the individual Zodiac Spirits themselves in the future? Let me know in the comment section down below. And if you haven't already, like and subscribe, hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps, and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. And with all that said and done, I hope you all have an awesome day.